Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America, we bring the resource to you. The DU Podcast with your host, Dr. Mike Brazier.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us again today. We have a special episode here, another little migration report, and today we're going to be speaking with Dr. Drew Fowler, the waterfowl and migratory game bird research scientist from Wisconsin DNR. And he's going to give us an update on kind of the situation of waterfowl migration, and kind of what he's seeing with respect to habitat conditions up there in his state. And I guess just for the record, we're recording this on November 14th. So Drew, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, thanks a lot. Appreciate you having me on today.
Absolutely. And so tell us a little bit just briefly about what type of information that your agency collects there with respect to migration, bird abundance this time of year.
Yeah, well, we've been having birds build up in the state over the last probably 3 to 4 weeks, and quite honestly, we probably reached our peak abundance here in the last week, and with this cold snap that we've had here in the last couple of days, might see birds starting to move out of the area, but really, I got to give some credit to the DNR with the Wildlife Management Bureau, particularly our wildlife biologist Taylor Finger and his assistant Jeff Williams have done a really good job of putting together a weekly report from the field. And so we have biologists scattered throughout the state, broken up in 4 regions, and they report weekly news on what they're seeing, local conditions, not just where the birds are, but also what the hunting pressure has been. And so I'd encourage anybody who's interested in talking or understanding what's going on specifically in Wisconsin to go to the Wisconsin DNR website. And if you just type in Wisconsin waterfowl surveys in the search bar, you'll see a tab there that says Notes from the Field, and you can get weekly updates. And so what we've been seeing here in the last week is that a lot of our interior birds are starting to get pushed out of these local wetlands and moving to bigger, deeper water like the Mississippi River or some of our larger lakes because particularly around my house right now, I live in southeast Wisconsin, a lot of those ephemeral wetlands are froze up, and so birds aren't able to use those anymore. But we conducted a survey. We do a couple of waterfowl surveys during the fall, particularly up at Green Bay. And our last survey in Green Bay was just a week ago on the 7th. And we do a cruise survey up there. We counted just around 35,000 waterfowl total. The majority of those were diving ducks, just under 34,000. Largely comprised of scaup. We had about 24,000 scaup, 3,600 golden eye, and about 5,000 bufflehead. A few dabblers mixed in there as well. But that was a week ago, and so you can expect with these colder temperatures that we've moved in, some of those birds are moving out. On the other side of the state, at the Mississippi River, we coordinate with the Fish and Wildlife Survey with their survey that they fly. And the latest that we've seen there, the last survey that we flew was on October 28th, so about 2 weeks old. But our count there for waterfowl comprehensively was just under 109,000 birds. The majority of those birds you could expect would be diving ducks. We had about 63,000 cans, 10,000 scaup. But we still had 15,000 or so dabbling ducks 2 weeks ago, mostly mallards, blue-winged teal, some widgeon and gadwall in there as well.
Blue-winged teal. You still had blue-winged teal up there?
About 2 weeks ago, actually, I was looking at gadwall. When I said 6,800 gadwall, that's actually, or blue-winged teal, that's actually gadwall. So our blue-winged teal numbers were quite a bit lower now that I'm looking at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
how do those numbers compare to sort of, I guess, a typical year or typical year this time of the migration, if you have a handle on that?
Yeah, well, and I'll speak with what I can particularly say, being in Wisconsin for a year, Mike, is I'm still learning some of that, some of the dynamics. But I think that, in terms of the seasonality of our weather patterns, we've seen an earlier cold front this push than we've seen before, and so that might have, at the same time, moved more birds from the north, right, to provide an input, but also move more birds further south. I'd have to go back and look at the particular surveys to see what that average looks like at the end of October. But I don't think that we're necessarily well below what our average might be.
Yeah, and you've probably, as you said, the cold front that moved through has put some ice on a lot of those shallower wetlands. And
Sure.
Are you seeing any ice form on any of the streams and rivers yet?
We definitely are, particularly in interior Wisconsin. I drove over the Baraboo and the Wisconsin River yesterday, driving north up to Stevens Point from Madison, and you're starting to see ice flows starting to occur. And so there's, like I said earlier, a lot of the actual seasonal wetlands are completely frozen out now. But the larger rivers, there's still a lot of backwater that hasn't frozen over yet, and birds are utilizing that. I think kind of where we're at in the stage of birds are moving out of those smaller wetlands into those larger bodies of water, and so the rivers definitely afford some space. So we're not devoid of birds by any means. Just got to look in the right places.
And there's probably not much snow on the ground up there right now either, is it?
Well, actually, there's a good bit where I'm at, and a good bit, I guess, relative in my mind. We had about probably cumulatively between Saturday and today, we've had about 6 inches on the ground, and we're starting to thaw out a little bit today. We're getting above freezing, but yeah, we had two fronts that came through that provided about 4 and 2 inches of snow, and so that was a cool transition to see how birds started utilizing fields differently before and after snow. But yeah, we've still got snow on the ground. I think parts of northern Wisconsin definitely had a front move through last night. So we're starting to get to a point where food's becoming more limited in the state. And so birds are going to have to make decisions where to go.
You and I were talking a little bit before we started recording here, and you were mentioning that you'd been out goose hunting a little bit, and so you actually have a pretty good number of geese that are in the area though right now, right? Yeah. Yeah,
geese have been around. I think they'll stay around for a little while longer for sure. I'm fortunate that where I live, I've got a nice mill pond that holds a lot of geese on it, and we can pattern them fairly well and figure out where they're going to field feed in the evenings. And we've had some really successful goose hunts in the evening coming out from the mill pond. And but definitely as that pond is starting to lock up, and as the snow cover has come on board, we've had to get a little bit more creative in where we go. But I've got a good buddy who spends a lot of time putting in the effort to scout that out, and I just reap the benefits.
That's always a good thing. And how long does your season run there in Wisconsin? I'm not very familiar with your dates up there.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of different zones that have different closures on their dates. But for ducks will end on the 26th in our northern zone. They'll end on December 1st in our southern zone. Mississippi River goes a few more days until December 3rd. But for Canada geese, we're going to go all the way to December 16th in the north zone for Canada geese, and then go to January 4th for Canada geese in the southern zone as well.
Okay, so your hunters still have a few more weeks to get out there and enjoy the resource. Yeah, that's good.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, yeah, we encourage that and appreciate you joining us, Drew. We'll catch up with you later.
Hey, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Special thanks today to our guest, Drew Fowler from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, for giving us an update on migration conditions in Wisconsin. Also thank our producer, Clay Barrett, who does a great job getting these podcasts out to you, our listeners. And to you, our listeners, we thank you for your time and your commitment to wetlands and waterfowl conservation.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the DU Podcast. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and visit www.ducks.org/DU Podcast for resources based on today's topics, as well as access to more episodes. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the Ducks.